Hi guys, I'm Jordan and I'm your Eat More dietitian. This week's video is gonna be much shorter than usual, not for any particular reason. I just had some thoughts that I wanted to have here for anybody who finds my page. I am a registered dietitian. I completed my master's degree from Boston University and I did my dietetic internship while there as well. I actually got to work with a dietitian who his full-time job was to work in what's called intensive outpatient setting, or IOP. It was a really cool experience. I have found that eating disorders are a little scary for providers. There's a lot of hesitation around taking on eating disorder patients. It was exciting for me to have the opportunity to work with individuals who had made that their career. During this training, I was doing this intensive outpatient, and I remember my first day was a little weird. This particular dietitian did not have someone shadowing them very often, which is fine. I appreciate him taking me on. But finished our first day, and he asked, how did you feel about your experience today? What did you learn? What were your observations? What were your thoughts? And I gave him some honest thoughts, mostly that I was a little overwhelmed by the program and the approach. And I asked him, how do you do this every day, all the time? This seems like it would be a really difficult job. He told me two things that have stuck with me and that I have shared with every intern I have ever worked with. The first thing he told me is that you can't care more than your patients do, which is good general wisdom. The other thing he told me, and this one randomly hits me over again, so this is the one that really made me want to share this video today. The other thing he told me is all medical advice needs to be both context specific and dose dependent for it to be functional for the person you're giving it to. When he said it, it hit me and it was interesting, but it didn't really hit me until I had a different experience with another dietitian. And I'm not going to give a whole lot of details about this, but I spent a couple of weeks with a dietitian and started to notice that they were repeating just the same things over and over again. They would ask the questions you would want them to ask as a dietitian, but it wouldn't really change what they were giving back. And context specific meaning if the person you're talking to can't afford the types of food you're encouraging them to eat, if the person that you're talking to doesn't have access to a vehicle, if the person you're talking to doesn't speak English as a first language, and you're giving them advice that requires them to have access to those things, it's not very context specific. It's not going to be accessible for them. It also needs to be dose dependent. Just prescribing weight loss to somebody isn't going to be very effective. How much weight loss are they looking for? How are they supposed to achieve that weight loss? Okay, you want to prescribe, go on a diet. What does that mean? It's not very dose dependent, right? You may have somebody who has been under eating for an extended period of time, trying to lose weight and trying to lose weight and trying to lose weight, but they're still classified as overweight and obese, and people just keep telling them, you just need to eat less. That person doesn't need to eat less. That person needs a better dosage, a better plan than that. I say all of this just to share this little nugget of good advice needs to be context specific and dose dependent. I find so often that people forget to take into account their own context when they are approaching dietary advice or healthy habits. I want to remind people your context matters. The context you find yourself in now matters because it's going to change. It may change for the positive, it may change for the negative, but that context is constantly changing. Being mindful of kind of where you're at in comparison to where you were can be really helpful and can be really validating. It's also important to remember that the dosage matters. Yes, we're talking about food, we're not talking about medications, but the dosing still matters. If you are in the middle of a really big project at work, it's probably not a great time to add a calorie deficit. If you are trying to get pregnant, it's probably not a great time to go on a low-fat diet. These are things that obviously it is helpful to have a medical professional to help you navigate, but sometimes when we're giving willy-nilly general advice on the internet, those things don't get consideration for the people watching. I wanted to make this video to remind you, if you're watching this, I am going to assume that you have some interest in nutrition and healthy habits. I want to encourage you to, when you come across these things, when you come across guidance for intermittent fasting or low carb diets, to take a second and think about how those things are going to play into the context of your life and how those things can be dosed to be appropriate for your life. Maybe intermittent fasting is something that might be beneficial for you, but maybe we need to ease into it. Maybe ease into it by fasting for 8 hours, making the dosage match the context, but these things need to balance. And they also need to stop being kind of shoved under the rug like they don't matter. Any piece of lifestyle, habit, advice, something you want to implement, please make it specific to your context. Make it dependent on the dose that is actually useful for you. You don't have to go to the extreme option right off the bat. If you think that weight loss might be something you're interested in, okay, let's try and lose weight on the most amount of food possible. Let's use the smallest dose that is effective. Ultimately, it shouldn't matter what everyone else is doing. You are the one implementing these changes. You are the one with your goals. You are the only one who knows your true motivations. You could share those things, but other people aren't going to internalize that the same way that you are. So it shouldn't matter what everyone else is doing. It shouldn't matter what I'm doing. It shouldn't matter what other professionals are doing. It shouldn't matter because you don't have their context. You don't have their needs. So this is just your friendly social media reminder to tell you, you are not everyone else and no one else is going to be you. It shouldn't matter what everyone else is doing. Just because someone else is doing it doesn't mean that that's what you should be doing. And it seems like something that might be missed or overlooked sometimes. So next week we'll be back with some more advice and things to work on and tips and tricks. But for today, before you implement any dietary changes in your life, remember, any good changes are going to be context specific and dose dependent. Thanks you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this or have any pressing questions or things you want me to answer, go ahead and drop them in the comments. Subscribe if you've been enjoying these, and I will see you all next week.